George St. Pierre made an appearance on the Pound for Pound podcast with Kamaru Usman and Henry Cejudo. George says that he believes he would have beaten Khabib Nurmagomedov had they fought back in 2020.
Well, I don't know. It's easy. I can say whatever I want, but I think Khabib could have beat me. I'm not saying I would have beat Khabib all the time. I was confident enough to take that fight that I was thinking that if I take that fight, I'm gonna beat him that day at that particular place, at that particular, that doesn't mean I will beat him all the time, but I was confident, but maybe I'm wrong. I think I would have beat him because in a way that I was going, if he would have come to put pressure on me, I would have put him down. I would have been confident to try to go for it.
Khabib responded to George via Instagram. He said, "I learned from this guy a lot. Even hear he talk about me is so interesting. GSP all day." Ahead of his fight against Bruno Silva this weekend at UFC Atlantic City, Chris Weidman says that he believes he can still be elite despite his leg break.
We talked to Dana afterwards, and he was saying, he would like you to retire, and that would be the conversation he would have with you. So was that ever a question in your mind, and what was that conversation like when it came time for you to return?
Well, for Dana White, he was told by the doctors directly right after my fight that I tore my ACL and I tore my MCL. So like in that fight, if you remember, he hit me with obviously a bunch of leg kicks, but there was one in particular where my leg kind of gave out. I couldn't stand down and I was limping. So I guess when the doctor checked me out afterwards, he thought that I tore my ACL, my MCL. So if I was going to be out for another year or so, Dana was like, of course, you should be retiring. I was open to it. I was open to retiring, not because I tore my ACL or my MCL, just because, I went out there, I accomplished a lot by coming back after having that catastrophic injury. And I was like, you know what, maybe I'm good. So in the time between that fight and this fight, I was kind of like, all right with maybe being done. And then I got a call for Atlantic City. And the first thought was like, man, honestly, that would be a cool place to put down my gloves.
Do you think there's a chance that this is your last fight, or are those things that you're speaking of, like, did that kind of reroute you a little bit?
Yeah, I feel motivated. During this training camp, I was very open-minded to being like, all right, let me read myself, see how I feel physically and also mentally. If there's something I still feel like I have things to offer, am I as good as I once was? Can I still evolve? And as the camp went on, man, I really think like skill set wise still, and I think better than ever. If you take one skill at a time, I don't think there's really anybody in the UFC in any division that has the skills in stand-up, the wrestling, and the jiu-jitsu like I have. If you put it all together and average it together, I think I'd be right on the top of the list. So I got to be able to put it together and perform, in the cage. But during the camp, I was looking world class, and yeah.
Mike Perry discusses the feeling he gets before fights.
Out of all the fights you had, which one where you were in the back right before you walked out, or like walking out where you were like, oh damn, like you felt the most, like whatever that feeling was, but it was the most intense? Because I've had fights where I've made it all the way in, I'm like, oh man, this ain't really
hard, because I guess it's always intense, and I feel like I've learned how to enjoy that, because I feel like that's something that you do not get all the time. I noticed that there was a difference in life when you're about to walk out and fight, and it's easily, I could sit here and think about the fights that I had that weren't my favorite, and I'm like, oh, those times obviously seemed intense before, but they could all feel intense, and it's what you do with it. It's how you feel about it. It's how you consume that energy, because that's an energy, and that energy can either stop you full force, or it can, you can go through anything.
Sean Strickland is pushing for that rematch against Strickland and says that he's not climbing the rankings again, and even hints that he'll pursue boxing if the UFC doesn't grant him the rematch. On X, he wrote, "The UFC fans want me and Strickland to settle it. Strickland wants to settle it. We all know I fought in a dirty liberal country who me. Dana knows it, the UFC knows it. If it was anyone else on the roster, the rematch would happen. Do the right thing, UFC." This user replied saying if they don't give you the rematch, that proves they robbed you on purpose even more. Sean replied, "No man, it's a fact. Trust me. Canada absolutely hated me and threatened to pull me." Another user replied saying we all want to see it happen. Sean said, "You know man, I'm not climbing that ladder again. If that isn't it for me, I don't know. Boxing." Another user said boxing would be fun to watch you in. You'd basically get paid to beat up YouTubers. And Sean said, "Yeah, go make millions beating up Jake Paul." Jamahal Hill reacts to the notion that Alex Pereira has a clause in his contract for UFC 300. The clause is that if Alex gets past Jamahal and comes out of the fight healthy, he gets to fight at UFC 301 in Brazil. On the Believe You Me podcast with Michael Bisping, Jamahal thinks that's completely untrue and has never heard of clauses in UFC contracts.
I heard him say that. It's cap, bro. They don't do clauses like that. You know they don't. You would.
But it's the first I've ever heard of one.
Imagine telling Hunter or Dana, hey, put this in my contract. And most they'll tell you is like, we'll see what happens when you get through this. We'll see what happens. But come on, bro. They know he knows.
You're right. Let's put a special clause in the contract.
Yeah.
They don't need a clause in the contract. If you get through it easy, you can just fight again. They'll do you a new contract. They don't need a clause.
Yeah. But there's no clauses. When have you ever had a clause in your contract?
I don't know.
Outside of this is what you're going to get paid, and then this is what you're going to get paid for. Outside of that, what other clauses have you had in the contract?
Don't be a dickhead, which I broke that one quite a lot.
You know what I'm saying? No, I'm talking like I'm talking about for you, like for them, like, oh, I'm getting this in this contract. It's never happened.
Money, pay-per-view points, tickets, airfare, that type of stuff. Outside of that, no, there's maybe some legal stuff, but you're right. When you put it like that, that's nonsense.
Yeah, it was funny to me, bro. It was funny to me, and it's funny like that how I can say like, yeah, I feel like I'm gonna knock him out, and it's like, oh, he's delusional, he's crazy, and all these things like that. But my man literally said he was gonna beat he was gonna beat me, and then turn around 3 weeks later and fight Magomed. That's crazy, bro. Magomed he's not gonna strike with you, bro. He's not gonna strike with you. He's gonna make you think he is, and then you're gonna be wrestling for your life the entire fight.
And that's going to wrap it up for the news. Thanks for watching. For daily MMA news and content, subscribe to Full Mount MMA and click the bell icon to be notified when we post videos. Here are the 3 top comments from last video. The first one's from PS9501. It says, Adesanya doesn't deserve another instant title shot coming from loss. If money was only interest, then we should give McGregor every title shot between lightweight to middleweight. The second one's from Ocean Drives. It says Robert Whittaker versus Hamzat is a banger, but I see Hamzat winning by robbery/controversial decision. And the final one's from Michael McConnell 7302. It says Izzy doesn't get to leapfrog Sean. Those were the 3 top comments from last video. If you want to be featured in the next one, all you have to do is comment down below. And if you missed yesterday's news, click the video on screen right now to get caught up.